the antidote is action. It's getting together with other vets, openly discussing this situation that they were in, and then designing some kind of action to take together to make the world better. It doesn't have to be the same thing. That's what the youth are doing. The youth are standing up and saying, I actually have to find a place to work where I can make a positive difference.
Expanding possibilities, the Mindset Zone.
I'm your host, Anna Melikian, and before we start with today's show, please remember to visit mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com, it's .zone. There you can find all the episodes and other amazing resources, all at mindset.zone. Dr. Libba Pinchot is a nationally recognized expert on helping leaders achieve triple bottom line success through widespread innovation and intrapreneurial engagement. Dr. Pinchot specializes in creating organizational transformation designed to spread through the company, throughout its supply chain, and well beyond. Libba loves working with extraordinary leaders and organizations dedicated to making people and the world better. She worked with companies such as Apple, IBM, Intel, HP, Texas Instruments, DuPont, Exxon, GE, P&G, J&J, Ford, Stanford University, just to name a few. And it's truly my pleasure to ever hear in the Mindset Zone podcast to speak about how can we help people cultivate innovation. And seems logical that the first question to be, how do you define innovation?
Oh, thank you so much, Anna. The simplest definition is meeting the needs of the future starting now. And the point about innovation is that there was a long tradition of innovation being very top-down in these big organizations. And it wasn't very successful because in actual fact, the number of people in the organization, the number of brains in the organization are spread throughout the employee base. Everybody has an opportunity to improve the way work is done and how the customer is served and how their other employees can benefit and how communities and societies can benefit. And so innovation isn't top down. It's something that in order to meet the needs of the future, everyone sees ways that they can improve things. And if they're engaged and supported in making changes that benefit both the company and the future and society, they love coming to work, being able to innovate.
I love that. So it's not so much about gadgets or technology, but about a mindset of innovation.
It is about the mindset of innovation. Yeah, I'm in the right place, I see.
Yes, because I love to meet needs of the future. And the future, by definition, didn't happen yet. And by tapping into the collective, not just the leaders of the organization, but truly the collective of all stakeholders, will be maybe more possible to be in sync with what is going to happen in the future to be able to meet those needs. Is that the idea?
Yes. And the mindset isn't just residing in the individuals, because the individuals, whether they're an innovation specialist or a sustainability specialist or just all of us average people who have jobs in companies, the innovation is in a context with a lot of barriers in it. And the barriers, for example, there's a drive in all companies that everything has to be profitable. And so in order to get the resources to make an innovation, you often have to prove that it will be profitable, which is really hard to do ahead of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a barrier. And the short-term focus of companies, in that they really are not used to investing in things that have a long payoff. And yet, if you're meeting the needs of the future, a lot of those things will have a long payoff. And then there are the internal silos, right? So, if you're the finance people and the sustainability people, they now work together, but it's not necessarily official. And then there's the individualism in this idea of what a firm is. That's a mindset. And so that a firm is supposed to be competitive with all the other firms, right? And it's not necessarily supposed to be part of the community and so forth. And yet some of the biggest cost savings around sustainability have been when sustainability people in organizations have gotten together and done some long-term purchases of power and save millions and millions and millions of dollars, so that the finance people say, oh my God, this is so incredible. Would you please do more of it? But that's a cross-organizational endeavor that kind of breaks the rules.
Yeah, it's a lot about, and that is one of the definitions of mindset, is all the beliefs, unconscious and conscious, that an individual or organization have, that in many ways determine the way that they see the world, the way that they behave in the world. And by creating and cultivating a place that allows innovation, new solutions can come up. And I love that you spoke about this goes from an individual level to the big organization level, because I think even if somebody just working in their own businesses or in a company, everybody has the experience of facing challenges. And if they see that as an obstacle that they cannot solve, there is not much room there to innovation. But if they see that as something that they can expand possibilities and play with it, maybe some innovative solution can happen there.
Yes, and it's the context that the leadership creates, right? It's the culture that the leadership creates, so that people are actually allowed to make a mistake, right? Failing your way to success. But, you learn where the mistakes are. Are they, an old phrase is, are they above the waterline or below the waterline? Think of a boat and drilling a hole in a boat. Is it above the waterline or below the? Well, you don't have authorization to make a mistake that would harm the company, but you do have authorization to make some little mistakes. So
in order to cultivate this innovation mindset in the organization and individually, there has to be room for playing, room for exploring.
Yeah, and that has to be the culture of the company, which is true in some companies, but not all of them. And I want to suggest that when we talk about employees, Paul Pullman, do you know who Paul Pullman is? He was CEO of Unilever, and he wrote this book called Net Positive with Andy Winston. And he had a blog today where he said what I think you believe, and I certainly believe, that it's the employees that are going to be the key accelerator of getting business to be more environmental and more ethical. And it's sort of, he said, what if CEOs treated their employees with the same respect that they treat their investors and build a purpose-driven culture? So when I'm talking about a culture, it's a culture that is very employee-focused. Now, the employees seem to have a little more accurate view of what's going on in companies. If 3/4 of the leaders say, oh, we're doing everything we can for climate change, for instance, only half of the employees agree with that. And if 3/4 say that the leaders put the same emphasis on sustainability as profit, only half the employees believe that. And yet 2/3 of employees, this was in 2017, I bet it's way more now, 2/3 of employees say that they want their employers to more actively address social and environmental issues. And when you look at the great resignation that's going on, and I believe so much of it is people who have had illness and inadequate daycare and inadequate social supports, but the companies are waking up to the fact that they're losing talent because they do not have a purpose-driven company.
And because that is how you say to see this as, and I think this is an opportunity. I think if we apply innovation to this, the great resignation situation is also an opportunity to come up with many changes that already are being tried in some organizations, and even new solutions to people to feel their individual contributions, teams' contributions have some purpose.
That's right.
And in this sense, because another concept that I think you are the originator of, that I think connects with this, I think beautifully, is the concept of intrapreneurship. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. And, it's a concept we've been talking about for 35, 40 years. And it's kind of changed over time. Originally, these were innovators who saw an idea, and maybe they would gather a team, and they always would have to find a sponsor because you can't get resources, unless you have someone who's a little higher up, and you have to be protected from the hierarchy, which kind of stamps out. It's got an immune system, it stamps out innovation in its nature. And they would get together and do a project that you can look at the history of the wonderful things, whether it's the Scotch tape I have in my hand, right? Or some wonderful technology or healthcare innovations. It often would come out of an informal team called entrepreneurs. Now we're looking at, and we would do training and train the sponsors and train the entrepreneurs in how to basically have a small business within the organization, right? So they kind of had to learn to do all the aspects of a business. And although they didn't take home the profits at the end of the day, the company got stronger, and they were so thrilled to be able to have that independence to put their ideas into play, right? Well, nowadays, we actually need that entrepreneurial spirit spread throughout the organization, in part because change that's required, the innovation that's required, given the incoming change in society and the planet, requires so much innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And plus, people are not settling for, just, being cogs in the wheel.
So it's almost that now it's more the intrapreneurship has to be part of the culture.
That's right.
And it's going back again to create that safe place to play, to try new things, to fail forward, and to make mistakes in a context that allows innovation and allows people to try new things.
One thing I've been thinking about in the last 3 or 4 months is the price of disengaged employees, the price of inaction, right? It's a psychological price too. We have a lot of despair in society now for very legitimate reasons, the health crisis among them being leading. But inaction in itself produces a kind of despair. And I've been talking for a while about why inaction is so dangerous. There's something called moral injury. And it's a phrase adopted from the VA Veterans Association with people who were in war and had terrible psychological trauma. And it was often not so much what they had done, but what they were unable to change.
Yeah, but just to understand the concept. So moral injury is, for instance, you are in a war situation or in a crisis situation. It's not that you injury or that you himself were part of an operation that had negative consequences, but you feel the moral injury because you were involved in that organization and you or you feel that you didn't did anything to, or you were not empowered to do something to stop that weapon.
That's right. And it violated your own moral core, right? And yet you had to be there. And you know, if you look at people in companies, you know, I work with companies sometimes in the oil and gas industry, right? And they're obligated to keep the company alive. That's what they sign up for, right? And they're obligated to keep delivering the things that you and I use. You know, we drive our cars, right?
Yep.
And yet they know deep down, if they don't, their children are telling them that they are in maintaining the work without change, right? They are harming the future, their future, the future of the planet, the future of their children. I mean, you know, it's a serious thing. And so they walk a really fine line. And to some extent, we all walk this really fine line between needing to keep the system going, because the tragedies that would happen if we let the system collapse, right? And also knowing that it's coming towards a train wreck, you know, it's got some real flaws out there. And, you know, the youth know this, okay? That there was this study just a few months ago of 10,000 young people, and they were from 10 countries, 16 to 24-year-olds. It was a really big and reputable study. And the researchers said that 75% of these 10,000 youth thought the future was frightening. 75%. And 60% say they were extremely worried, and that they also felt betrayed by either the governments or the adults around them, the next generation up. And they're right on, right? And just one more thing, 40% fear having children.
Wow. And that makes it even more important to cultivate innovation, because it's almost that they are seeing the glass half empty. But if we manage to help them to see the glass half full through innovation, to empowerment, in the sense that these are the people that can help us to meet the needs of the future. If we give a little bit, yes, it's a fine line and a difficult line, and how can we change these huge systems that are so overwhelming in so many ways that we feel like we are victims of the system. But how can we be the butterfly flapping our wings to create that chain of events that can lead to a better future?
You know, the most interesting thing about this particular study of the 16 to 24-year-olds is that this big group of researchers, they all agreed that this was a sign of mental health. This was a sign of having a strong moral code. Okay, that these young people, they're right on. You know, they actually are more able to absorb the truth. Their mindset is more in tune with reality. And so they're having actually a positive awareness and taking positive stances, right? And here's here's the antidote, okay? Whether it's in vets or in the youth or in the CEO, the antidote is action. It's getting together. What they do with the vets is getting together with other vets, openly discussing this situation that they were in, and then designing some kind of action to take together to make the world better. It doesn't have to be the same thing. That's what the youth are doing. The youth are standing up and saying, I actually have to find a place to work where I can make a positive difference. I think there's a bit of moral injury in all of us and in our leaders, which kind of gives you a sense of compassion for everyone, right? We're all doing the best we can.
And how can we support this change? How can we support the youth to take the action together? How can we be part of the solution and help create this culture where innovation can happen everywhere and people are open to see it?
Well, I think integrity is the word. And, because I work in companies, let me say how companies can do that. Okay? Okay. Companies need to be able to walk their talk. They can't have these targets that they don't really intend to fill as far as making the future safe for the next generation. They have to have bold targets. They can't just have easy targets, right? And they have to not lobby for the opposite of their targets, right? That's what I mean by integrity, wholeness, right? And companies are catching on that they really cannot any longer get away without being a shining example of integrity, because people are going to get real pissed.
And everybody now is has a phone in their hands, so you can do a video, you can put the spotlight in any, if they are not walking their talk, they can be found out and exposed much easier than before.
That's right. And on the other hand, I think it's important to remember that every single one of them is trapped in a system. And they really want to do the right thing. The CEO has the board has Wall Street, and therefore, to the extent that we give them the chance by some lobbying, some citizen lobbying, right? Or some consumer lobbying, or some support in finding ways to transform. Of course, my work is supporting them in the transformation.
And this, how do you say, because another thing that you always speak about, because this is a system, the organizations, they have to thrive to this transformation. The consumer can, and the youth can lobby about demanding innovation and demanding the transformation. So how can, again, and sometimes we could do innovate more. How can we be open more to the future? Because you said innovation is meeting the needs of the future. So it's almost like we have to be in a place that is okay for us to look in the horizon and imagine what it can be, the good and the bad. And so how can we help people in general to have that more wider perspective, to be able to look and then to be able to play with the different scenarios and solutions?
That's an enormous question, but
let's solve the problems of the world here.
Right now. I think of one of my favorite quotes. It's from a fellow called David Orr. And he said, "Hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up."
Can you repeat?
Okay? Hope is a verb with its sleeves rolled up.
Action again.
Action again, right? little actions that come to fruition, and suddenly you say, I've got a handle on the future, right? I did something, it got better. The local Lions Club picked up all the Christmas trees for free, right? And they all got better, thinking we can get together and do something positive for the community, right? Because despair can be transmuted into hope. And we're always healing our moral injuries through our work. It's continuous. And so if we can look out and find, how can I just help a little more? I have to take care of myself. I have to be compassionate to myself. But how can I just have a little more compassionate action in the world?
I love that it's not about blaming or shaming, because that is, again, feeding the negative circle that I cannot do anything and just blame and shame. It's about being gentle with ourselves, but that is not an excuse for not doing something.
That's right, yeah. And, there's another mindset that I think we've kind of forgotten, and that's that people are basically good. Mm-hmm. Not 100%, but almost everybody is doing the best they can. And so you can look for people to surprise you. Mm-hmm. And you can connect with them and maybe find some common ground. And everyone can change.
I love that. Is the belief, if we have to pick a belief, why not to pick the belief that in essence people thrive to, it's the self-actualization that if we go to the Maslow, he was speaking about the self-actualization that is it's a positive force.
And our job is to help each other be our best selves, right? Mm-hmm. And making the world better through our work.
We can do that as individuals in our own lives, wherever we work, because it's a big chunk of our lives. And really is the cultivating is be able to together, because I think it's very important to stress this is not an individual thing, it's a together thing, that through small actions we can make a big difference. So tell me where people can find out more about how to get involved, even from a consumer or a company. Maybe let's give several things here. If a leader in a company is listening to this conversation, what will be a good resource for them? And if he's an employee or a consumer, what will be a good resource for them? So that's two different angles.
Well, there's a big list, but...
one place to start.
I do have a website.
Yes, please tell the website that I think for the leaders in companies will be the place to go.
Yeah, and everyone to some extent, because it is innovation is really a bottom-up process. So we all get to do it. So the website is Intrapreneur, INTRAPRENEUR.com, Innovation for Resilience.
And I know that you also wrote and co-wrote a lot, and including books. What will be the one that you think could be a good entry door to cultivate innovation?
Well, there's a book that's been around for a long time, but you can still buy it, called Intrapreneuring, by that same word, same spelling, INTRAPRENEURING. And it's a manual for all of us to be innovators.
So I think that will be the place to start, or a great place to start. One of the possibilities here, one of the things that when you're defining innovation, I really love is that it's really open, expand what's possible in front of us. And that is one of the principles here in the Mindset Zone, is exactly not seeing things just as one way, but a diversity of possibilities and possible ways that we can explore.
Oh, thank you. I'm so pleased to be here, and I feel so at home in your mindset. And expanded.
Yes, thank you so much. And they can find in your website. I will make sure that in the show notes, all that information is there, including your LinkedIn profile. And let's keep the big goal in mind, that is making this a better world for ourselves and for the next generations. And we can have our contribution to it. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. Beautiful.
Expanding possibilities, the mindset zone.
Thank you for listening, and remember to visit mindset.zone. Yes, instead of .com, it's .zone. There you can find all the episodes and other amazing resources, all at mindset.zone. As always, I'm so grateful you are here. Expand what's possible for you, for the ones around you, for the world.